We don't know that spending more time in the home necessarily is going to make you more money. Giving a lot of technical information to people sometimes shuts down.
If you are a technician, right, if you put yourself in a position where you have to discount at the end, it is already less likely that you're going to close that deal.
Hey, how's it going? It's Tim Brown, and this is the HVAC and Plumbing Hustle Podcast, and I've got Sebastian Jimenez on. Is that how I say your last name, sir?
Yes, sir. Sebastian Jimenez, yes. You said it very right, so yeah.
All right, well, we're talking about an AI, which is Rilla Voice. If you haven't heard of them, go check them out. Would help you coach your home service reps much better. But with using AI to understand what's working, what's not working. But we're asking questions to that AI today and analyzing 1.4 million sales conversations and going up every day, right? I know there's so many conversations now cataloged in this thing, allowing us to get better insights about what actually works in home service sales. Now, we're not talking about anecdotes.
Yeah.
We're talking about data. And specific data for a lot of sales conversation. So I know that you'd put out content about the time in home and having a higher correlation. The more time you spend in home, a lot of times the higher the ticket. So I wanted you to ask you, what's the ideal minute amount in the house to get the highest sale number before it reaches a point of diminishing returns? And I know you've got some graphs for us to look at. So let's look at those graphs.
So hi, and Tim, thank you for having me on, man, and thank you everybody for watching. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sebastian, founder and CEO of Rilla. We are the leading virtual routing software for the home services industry. So what that means is when your technicians, HVAC, plumbing, electrician, and beyond, when they go out and talk to homeowners in the home, they will be recording their conversations with the Rilla mobile app from their phones and tablets, and then we'll be using AI to automatically transcribe, analyze, and give them feedback to help them improve their sales and to help you do what we call virtual ride-alongs that are 100 times faster, better, more productive than physical ride-alongs. We, like you mentioned, Tim, recently had a milestone at Rilla. We crossed the 1 million conversations recorded on Rilla in the home, and it's actually 1.4 now since we made that announcement. And because of that, we started looking at these really interesting insights that we could find across the entire conversational database, right? Because we always wonder, right? Like, the way we call it, we always have all this coaching that happens, right? And we have like all this training that we do ourselves for our technicians where we say, like, listen, you're supposed to build a report at the beginning. You're supposed to spend a certain amount of time in home. You're supposed to, do the company story. You're supposed to do the good, better, best. And so we wanted to actually put all these coaching notions to the test and see if the data backed them up or if it maybe gave us a different perspective. And so what we started doing with Rilla is we have a new AI system. We call them Rick AI, where you could just literally ask any questions to Rick. You could literally, like ChatGPT is trained on the trillions of data points in the internet. Rick is trained on the millions of conversations now recorded on Rilla. And so what you could ask Rick is you could be like, Rick, what's the optimal time in home, right? Before you get to diminishing marginal returns. Rick, what is the optimal talk ratio? Rick, what is, does time in home correlate to higher tickets, right? Like you could ask it, and then Rick will literally just look at all the conversational database across industries and tell you, like, listen, this is what we found. Like, the conversations that have a higher talk ratio or have a lower talk ratio close more at a higher ticket. And so you could actually literally, and so what we could do is this thing called Moneyball for sales. For those of you who haven't seen the movie Moneyball, it's a great movie with Brad Pitt where this guy, Billy Beane, he wrote this book called Moneyball. A statistician wrote this book about Billy Beane, who was the manager of the Oakland A's, and he revolutionized how baseball and general sports were played because he literally was able to identify, he hired a team of statisticians to identify all the inputs in baseball games that produce the best outputs. Like, what are the different plays that we need to run based on millions and millions of data points? And so the same thing we did for sales. So we recently put our report, two reports actually, that time in home, like literally the number, like the amount of time that you are spending in the home is correlated with both a higher close rate and it's correlated with a higher average ticket. And this the study we did it for more of the larger ticket kind of replacement sales. So if you're an HVAC, think of the comfort consultant that goes in to sell a replacement sale, right? They're going in, marketing generated lead, tech generated lead. They go in to try to sell a new equipment. If you're thinking plumbing, you're thinking about a repipe, right? Electrician, you're thinking about a big ticket item. So those take longer kind of, conversations. And what we found, the first thing we found is that for these replacement sales, right, for these big ticket sales, the average time in home for the conversations that closed the deal was 2 hours, and the average time in home for the ones that didn't close was 1 hour and 24 minutes. So the conversations that did close were like 30 to 40% higher than the ones that didn't close, right? So that's significant, right? Across hundreds of thousands of conversations that we analyzed in the last few quarters. And the second thing we identified was that the more time you spend in the home, and I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can see, the more time you
got me on the edge of my seat because I want
yeah.
to folks this data because I wanted to try to because I've been listening and watching. I think actually a lot of people will have been kind of watching this develop because you've got a lot of attention now, and I'm excited that you're getting more visibility around this stuff. So I want to try to bring some original data here too.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give everybody the backdrop. So this is the first graph that we put out. So this is, the average time in home for closed deals versus non-closed deals for high ticket replacement sales. And then you see that there's a very high correlation as well with time spent in home, right? So here we're talking about 3 hours to 3 hours and 30. So there's a big correlation between the average ticket, right? If you want to sell a job that's like more than $16,000, like, you think about some HVAC systems that are going to cost you $16,000, $20,000, $25,000, you're spending about 3 hours in the home with the homeowner, having that conversation and talking through the benefits. So time at home is clearly correlated with a higher average ticket for the replacement sale that you're trying to make.
I appreciate all that background. And now we get into, hey, because I was curious, does this go away at a certain point? Like, is there too long in the house?
Hey there, are you a home service business owner that's tired of your answering service just kicking the can down the road? Well, we can help. Pink Collars will assign a dedicated, supported, and trained individual to answer your phones, emails, texts, and even more. Give us a call at 888-325-7465, or better yet, check us out online, www.pinkcolors.com.
So what I did, right, when you asked me, is I had one of our engineers. And guys, when we publish these studies on the Rilla reports, we do a lot of data cleanup to make sure the data is sound. So this graph that I'm going to show you is literally an engineer.
We're raw data. We're doing raw data. It's not anecdotal. It is based on the data, but to me, it's interesting.
Look at this.
We talk about essentially like that. There's a point at which it would fall off potentially, but we're talking about a very long period. Like, it looks like 360 minutes to 390 minutes. It's still very high.
So 360 minutes, just to give everybody an idea, that's 6 hours in the home. And so here's what
the close rate is still very high. And
so we did it. Just I want to give a disclaimer on this graph. So you guys see that the ticket is different than the one that we were doing before. So the original analysis that we did, that's published on the Rilla Labs and the Rilla reports on the Rilla website, that one was for replacement sales. This is looking solely at technicians, because I know we were going to talk about HVAC, plumbing, electricians. So we wanted to kind of do this analysis just for technicians. And so this is technicians that are upselling parts. They're upselling like kind of UV lights. They're going out of a job. Some technicians, they get out of there with just maybe like a one upsell, maybe a membership program. And so maybe some technicians are getting out there with like the whole package, like, and they sell the good, better, best, and they sell the best options for the home. You know what I mean? Whether it's an HVAC, electrician, plumbing. And so what you see here is that, 360 minutes, that is 6 hours in the home. And as you can see, the same correlation applies. The same correlation applies as with the high ticket replacement sales. That is, the more time you spend in the home, the higher your average ticket, which is kind of crazy. And based on this data, Tim, it doesn't look like there are diminishing marginal returns, because we're talking about 6 hours here. 6 hours, 6.5 hours in the home. And then we literally didn't even have data that went about 6.5 hours that went above that. We just had like a few conversations here. And so
people are getting out of there at 6 hours. But I wanted to kind of also challenge you on the data that you've put out there already, which, like, because the obvious question is with these things is always, is correlation causation? Or is it something different. Like we don't know that spending more time in the home necessarily is going to make you more money. Is that because I want to approach this with a certain amount of skepticism, because it could just mean that more complex problems often necessitate higher purchases. Is that possible?
Yeah. So the original data set that we put out, and we put that disclaimer on the report. Correlation does not imply causation. In order for you to say if something's causal, you have to literally do a randomized experiment. You have to do it in a lab, right? So these are we're just presenting the data so that people can draw their own conclusions. So there seems to be a very strong correlation in both cases for the high ticket replacement sales and the technician kind of repair upsell sales as well. This doesn't mean that spending more time in the home will lead you to higher sales or higher average tickets. What this could mean, there's different ways to interpret it. For this graph that I just showed you, I'll just show it again. And again, this is a very, very, very rough graph that we just literally pulled out in the last 5 minutes here. So look at this. So what this means, it could also mean, right? So when technicians are, doing a job, when they get called out to do a job, a lot of the times when they sell it, right? And here, all of these are sold because they sold something. A lot of times they're literally doing the job on the spot, right? And so it could mean that higher ticket sales, right? The higher ticket items that they sell, the best options, right? Require them to spend more time in the home to complete the job. Because remember, when technicians go into the home, they're recording the whole interaction with the customer. So this could mean that it's not that, hey, if you spend more time in the home, you're more likely to increase your average ticket. It could mean that, hey, if you have an average, if you have a higher average ticket item that you want to sell, it means that you need to spend more time in the home. It could mean that. It could also mean that there's just like people who sell more tend to spend more time presenting options and so on, and different things like that. So it's not necessarily just like literally sitting there in the home and just like you're not going to just sell by just like walking in the home and just sitting there and just like looking at your time watch. There's a lot of things that are going on here. And again, this is a rough graph that we just pulled literally right here. But it's very interesting that it keeps going up and up and up and up, regardless of whether it's causal or not, right? Because you can assume what it is. It's a very interesting relationship, right? That you see here that it kind of starts plateauing, but then it goes up again. Like this is still very, very interesting data, and there doesn't seem to be like, I mean, you're spending 6 hours in the home. That means you're spending half of your day there. And so, what one takeaway that I do get out of this for technicians out there that might be watching is that this idea, like a lot of the times technicians say, well, like I can't spend that much time in the home. Well, certainly you can. Like certainly, like there's a lot of people out there doing it. They're spending 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours in the home, and there does seem to be a very strong relationship with higher tickets, right? So, so it's still a very interesting relationship, even if it might not be causal.
All right, we're going to tackle 3 more, and those 3 are going to be so that you guys want to tune in for this, okay? 1, we're going to talk about promotions. How does that affect the close rate? Any correlations, any causations there? Ideal amount of time. Actually, sorry, that's the one we already did. So discounts, promotions. Do the highest closing reps move fast or slow through conversations? And we'll talk about, I think that those are actually the 3 that we want to talk about today. So, 3 things.
So, perfect. Let's do that. So let's start with the talking fast or slow. So talking fast or slow. Let me see if I can share this here.
The question is, like we're talking about like either fast. Is it very valuable to talk fast? And because some homeowners might like the ability to get through something with you. And then also on the slow side, do we want to slow down for them to make them feel taken care of and homey? And what it looks like is it's not slow, even though there's an outlier at the very beginning. It looks like the big cluster graph is really at that 150 to 200 mark.
Yes. So again, guys, this is a very rough graph that we just pulled out. Usually when we do these analyses, we make sure we clean up the data. But again, this is live, so we just like literally pulled this up right here. So as you can see here, just to explain the graph to everybody, this is probably an outlier. This is somebody who's talking at less than 50 words per minute. This is probably somewhere, I'm imagining, somebody went in there to the home, recorded very quickly, said a few words, or didn't say any words at all, and they just made a sale because they were going in there to kind of like just collect something similar to here, like almost 0 words per minute. These are outliers. We would have taken them out of the graph, right? But what we would like to see with the data is not the particular points, it's the story that the data tells. When you want to look at the story, you want to look at the pattern, right? And this is a very, very, very rough graph that we just literally just pulled out a bunch of conversations. And here, what we find, which is very interesting, is that there seems to be an optimal talk speed, right?
Yeah.
There seems to be an optimal talk speed here.
I want to give some, so there's a lot of cluster right in that 150 200 mark, just to give you some idea, because I don't think most people are familiar with what is 150 words per minute versus 200. But what we realize is essentially, like, if I look at this I asked ChatGPT, like, what is 150 words? The average audible talk speed is actually 150. So average audiobook, if you're ever listening to an average, like a kind of audiobook, that would be an average talk speed. And then if you listened at 1.5x, that would be 230-ish words per minute, which would be over. So if you're listening to Audible on 1.5, and I get a little fast when I talk sometimes, that would not be ideal for sales. So when I'm talking really fast and kind of trying to move things a little, and I think it is indicative. If I had to like say why that's the case, I think sometimes fast talking salesperson, it feels like that fast talking salesperson might be manipulating or something like that. So I think I would guess that's why homeowners are not buying as much when you're talking really fast.
So like what you could consider here as well, right? So which is really interesting. So it's like this almost represents like a standard normal curve, right? That has a very big peak right here at between 150 and 200 words per minute. This point is about 185 for everybody who's watching. You see that it kind of peaks there and it starts going down after 185.
Just be listening. That's why I'm kind of over explaining in that way. But
yeah. So like guys, for those of you who are listening, it literally looks like a standard normal curve that just like a normal distribution, right? Yeah. That is centered around the 185 mark, and that's the peak, 185 words per minute. 185 words per minute.
1.2x on Audible. Think about
1.3x, like 1.2 to 1.3x. Yeah, so 1.2 to 1.3.
Which honestly, this is going to change my Audible listening behavior because I often listen at the 1.5. But if I'm trying to condition my mind to sell better, I'm going to condition it to sell better, to talk more at the 1.3x so that I don't get too fast. And
like what's interesting here is there seems to be diminishing marginal returns to talk speed. My talk speed is actually around here at around 220. So I'm already losing the peak, right? I'm not horrible, but I'm losing the peak right here.
That's funny you know. How do you know that?
Because I use Rilla on all my calls. Yeah, I use Rilla on all my calls. Absolutely. and so like
fun thing for people to be able to try to check on their own talk speed, you know?
Oh my God, the biggest things that people notice when we put them on Rilla is first their talk ratio, because they didn't realize the average sales rep or technician, they spent 75 to 85% of the time talking. They never realized that. They thought they were talking 50-50, but they're talking like 85% of the time in some cases. And then the talk speed, it's like, holy crap. My talk speed is around 214 to 224. So that's like I'm right around here, like this mark right here. And what you can see, it starts going down. The trend is downwards the further away you get from the 185 mark. But the same thing happens on the other side, which is interesting. It doesn't mean you should talk slower, because if you talk slower than 185, like if you start, the average human talk speed is around 164 words per minute. So it means that the average technician who's trying to make these, higher ticket sales, right? In order to sell a higher ticket, right? They have to be talking a little bit faster than the normal human being, a little bit faster, a little bit faster.
I just want to know too, like, what does it indicate if somebody's talking slow? It might not give you confidence that I know what I'm talking about, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's like, imagine, I guess it's like a meme that people could consider here. So like, people have seen the movie Ferris Bueller's Days Off, when the guy goes, Bueller, You learn. That's
Yeah.
like somebody who's talking very slow, very
Yeah.
monotone. And so if you're talking very slow, it's almost like you're boring the person. It's like, oh my God, Jesus Christ. But if you're talking really fast, you might be unintelligible. You're talking about all these technical details. People can't
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. They can't really figure out what it is. You're hyperactive, so you're entertaining to listen to, but they don't really understand what you're saying. So they're unlikely to make a purchasing decision. So it seems like you want to be at that Goldilocks zone of
Yeah.
100 and 185. You want to be between the 160 word per minute mark and the 200 word per minute mark, like right around that range, so that you're in that really peak optimal Goldilocks zone of talk speed, so that you could
One.
maximize your chances of increasing your average tickets.
He does is he teaches the most valuable team in your business. He'll just add nothing but profit.
There's so much money left in the call center. So much money. If you're not at a 90% booking rate, showing empathy on the phone, smiling on the phone, making sure they're having a better day after they got off the phone with you, then you need to call Power Selling Pros and see Brigham.
I just thought of a premise that I would love to test if I could test a premise, but I maybe we'll save it for the next one.
Yeah.
But because I love this book called Pitch Anything, and he says,
Yeah.
kind of in line with if you're talking fast, but he says that like giving a lot of technical information to people sometimes shuts down. He calls it the croc brain. He says that, and I know you're having on your guys' podcast, you're having sales coaches on to kind of give explanation to why these things are the case, because they kind of know it already because they see anecdotes of what this data looks like in the wild, right? But he talks about giving technical jargon and just steering
Yeah.
away from that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I would say, like for instance, like Uncle Joe Crisera and like a few other sales coaches that I know will talk about like he basically like names the package like something comfortable and friendly to them, and he doesn't
Yeah.
really like going into the extreme detail. It sometimes shuts people's brain off, and I would be interested to see technical jargon and how that affects close rate.
Yeah. I mean, let's see. Let me see.
Okay, we've got the tool up, and I know it's in beta right now, but if you can try to ask it if people use more technical jargon versus less technical jargon, if there's any correlation. I don't know how you'd ask that, but
How
yeah,
much
that's the
time?
premise. It's essentially like you should be focused more on benefits, not features, basically. And that if you get too into features, and here's this specific thing, even though you might be accurate as a technician, as a salesperson, even though you might actually, you're absolutely saying the truth. For some reason, if people don't have a frame of reference, then they will often kind of assume not that you're telling a lie, but that they might need, their brain goes, oh, I might need to look into this because he's talking
Right.
about something very technical. So I need to look into this and I need to think real hard right now. And essentially, you
Yeah.
almost don't want people to think really hard. You want them to like relax and like not get uptight. And technical language creates a little bit more uptightness sometimes. So that's the general premise. I don't know if the data would exactly support that, but I found that to be true in my world, like with digital marketing. When I'm trying to help somebody with digital marketing, I'm talking a little bit more about the result that it's going to get them. And I'm not always talking about here's exactly how we're going to get the result. And here's the exact specific thing that we're going to do every single time, because they actually don't care that much about that. They care more about I'm going to get more leads, and how many more leads am I going to get?
Yeah. So I just asked I just literally, we have a tool called Rick AI that you could just ask
Yeah.
questions to. And I just asked Rick AI that question of like, so I said, look at the conversations from, for this question, I would say to, it's easier to look at the longer ticket sales, like
Yeah.
with the comfort consultants, because
Yeah.
a lot of conversations, the technicians are not even going to go into product details, right? So
Yeah.
you want to go into conversations where it's going to be pretty similar all across, because you want the ones that sold to be talking about product details and the ones that didn't. So for this one, I ask it about the conversations from comfort consultants, and I said, how much time are the sales reps spending talking about technical features about the product in conversations that they sold versus ones that they didn't? Because when you talk about technical jargon, you can kind of measure how much technical jargon you're doing by how much time you're actually spending talking about the technical features of the product. And so that's what I asked the AI. It's running right now, but it's like millions of conversations. It takes a little bit of time.
Let's ask this other one, and then if that one comes back and we've got data for it, let's look through it. But let's the other one that we have data for is what's the ideal? No, it's discounts, or what we're calling promotions. Does it actually help sell more deals, and what percentage amounts are the most likely to increase deals? So we're trying to figure out, is there a correlation between higher close rates and offering promotions?
Yes. So this one is a really interesting one. So not only is there no correlation between discounts, right? Discounting and higher close rates, there's actually the opposite. There's a correlation between discounting and lower close rates, because what we did is we looked at an analysis. I'll show you guys here. We looked at an analysis of conversations, right? And again, we're looking at just technicians. We're not looking at high replacement ticket sales.
Mm-hmm.
And so this close rate that you see here, this is a 20% close rate, 23% close rate for the ones where they didn't mention discounts to technicians versus a 16% close rate when they did mention discounts, right? So, so what this means, right? And again, this is very rough data. This is like, the close rate seems very low. Contractors might be wondering, like, well, why is the close rate so low on average? You have to understand that a lot of the times technicians are just going out to do a repair and they're not even attempting the sale. You know what I mean? So a lot of the conversations, there's no sale to be made. We're looking at whether the technician sold a specific part or a UV light or some sort of upsell while they were in the home, right? So if they sold something on top of the job that they were there to fix, a lot of jobs you just don't go in and sell anything. You just go in and do the job and repair it, and there's an opportunity for upsell. So that's why the close rate looks really low, right? So
we're talking about a 43% difference, right? Like we talked about this beforehand. It's a 43% difference. Like I said, loose data. We're getting these are experiments. We're like live.
Yeah, we're live. Yeah. So
I think further analysis will be done by people smarter than me for sure. 43%. It seems like a lot, and so that begs the question, obviously. And I'm going to kind of make sure that I provide the voice of skepticism here. Is that correlation or causation? Do we just offer discounts when somebody seems like they wouldn't be able to afford something, and then that's what relates to the lower close rate potentially?
So I see that graph. So what you said there is correct. So just very basic data. We just looked at conversations from the last month. So this is about 18,000 conversations for technician servicing calls that we looked at from the last month. And we wanted to keep it just to HVAC, plumbing, electrician. We didn't look at other industries that Rilla serves. So this is just 18,000 conversations from the last month. Just for service calls. This is not accounting replacement sales, right? So if you're a technician, this matters to you, right? Not a comfort consultant. And what it says is that the close rate is 43% higher when you don't offer discounts versus when you do offer discounts. Again, this is not implying causation. You cannot assume causation when you don't do an experiment in a lab, but there is a very interesting relationship here. What could be happening is, hey, if you discount, you actually make it less likely that you're going to sell. That's one hypothesis. Another hypothesis is, which I think is reasonable, is if you are a technician, right? If you put yourself in a position where you have to discount at the end, it is already less likely that you're going to close that deal, right? Because what might be the case is that the technicians that are discounting at the end of the conversation, it's already because the sale's lost and they're just kind of like a Hail Mary attempt to try to close the sale. And so they're offering the discount because they've kind of already lost the battle. And so it might be that it's not that they're offering discounts, ergo the sale's not made. It's like they're not going to make the sale, and they already know that. So then they're offering discounts as a last-ditch attempt to. So, which is still, I mean, those are the two hypotheses I'm thinking about because the correlation's there, right? So why is it happening? Why is the correlation there? There might be something else about technicians who are. It might be like top performers are less likely to discount than bottom performers, and bottom performers close less than top performers as well. So the people who are more likely to close are just less likely to discount because they obviously want to get a higher average ticket and they know how to build the value and build the sale. And so it could be a lot of things, but what's really interesting is that the correlation's there. Discounting does. What's clear is discounting does not help you.
Yeah.
So it's clear. Discounting does not help you increase your sales. We can say for sure.
Yeah. And I think like ultimately some people go in with the mindset that, hey, I'm going to like, they're like, they have them in their back pocket ready to go. It's like, this frames you as a discount provider.
Yes.
And I think that I've always thought that, right? With discounts being on the forefront of your mind, it also might look to them like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be buying this if they're coming out with this discount real quick. So
yeah.
Coach would tell us about this. And by the way, I want to say, if you haven't been watching Rilla's new podcast, check it out. It's been essentially data like this is getting presented on a regular basis and being analyzed with the sales coach. So think of this as kind of a little intro to that world, and go check that out. But if you really want specific data to your company and to be able to make these types of Moneyball decisions, strongly recommend checking out. Did you guys get Rilla.com now? Rilla.com.
Yes, we got Rilla.com. It's RILLA.com. And you could go and book a demo with one of our highly trained sales consultants who we train every single day with Rilla. I use Rilla every day. And so all of our salespeople, they are trained with the latest in AI technology. So go check it out and see if it would be good for your business. And yes, and if you want to check out the podcast, it's called the Rilla Labs. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So yes, Rilla Labs, we have sales coaches from all over the home service industry and home improvement at large. And we unpack data like this. It's kind of like the Huberman Labs where we discuss the science of sales for the everyday life of a salesperson and a sales manager. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. And obviously check out Hook Agency, hookagency.com, Hook Agency all over social media. And check out Rilla.com and Rilla all over social as well. And thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. This was fun.
Yep. Bye.